A Code Red in Corrections by Carl R. Torsmans, former Deputy Warden and Trainer with Arizona Department of Corrections and New Mexico Corrections Department. The meaning. A Code Red is a military term used when justice is to be served in a unit. Self-explanatory, but more to it than just the word justice. Translated to civilian terms, action taken by a company or agency to maintain its credibility and good reputation after a bad situation. The political term for Code Red in the private and state government is crisis management. The political correct term is crisis management. Again, leaves a lot to be interpreted when you look into what the meaning of those words are. In the movie A Few Good Men, it's in the course of the trial that it establishes a Code Red was standard practice at Guantanamo Bay as a means of enforcing discipline and getting sloppy Marines to follow procedure. One might be surprised that this practice is alive and well in civilian establishments and government agencies as well. Not spoken of, very rarely discussed except among themselves, and even then, very rarely. The definition of a civilian Code Red is when a screw-up, whistleblower, or undesirable employee is beaten by his own work team as a warning to shape up. It's another form of bullying, and it's not illegal to do so, unlike in the military, where it's against regulations to issue a Code Red. Although we have policies that prevent hostile work environment and harassment, it's still not been determined that bullying is illegal. A modus operandi? They beat up on weaklings, troublemakers, whistleblowers, uncooperative employees, intimidate them, they invoke fear on them, they attempt to silence them. These are all managerial and correctional setting methods of dealing with people identified as targets. The methodology used to beat someone consists of various forms of psychological and methodological formats that may impact an employee, either in the short term or in the long term. The word beat up is not necessarily physical. However, there are many cases where physical altercation had occurred. The logo that you're looking at, the beatings will continue until morale improves, was initially a humorous one, but it actually reflects that this actually happens inside corrections facilities. Now, the first term, or the first method, is a psychological short term. It's a time when everybody wants to prove something to show their value and their worth to the agency or organization. And it's most ideal when there's a time period attached to the change or challenge given. It can be for the sake of the good. It depends on the spirit that is delivered. And it's meant to be short term. The long term is the methodological that is implemented when the short term doesn't work, and this results in structural changes such as job assignments, shifts, or working conditions, including days off, promotions or denial of promotions, transfers or reassignments, disciplinary or unnecessary interviews or interrogation into behaviors. At this point, the option for the methodological beating creates deliberate and most likely permanent changes in the work philosophy and the model managing the employee. And that can be seen as a setup and an example of what happens when you don't conform to the culture in the workplace. Clearer message. Once you get to the point where they structurally and change the way they manage you, sets an example for others to take notice. In the movie, Colonel Jessup said, but deep down in places you don't talk about it at parties, you need me on that wall. We use words like honor, code, and loyalty. Hence, flawed correctional administrators and top executives actually believe that doing the wrong things for the right reason is justified. The same spirit, the rogue spirit, transfers to corrections. Prison work is a black sheep of the criminal justice system. It's likely the public never thinks or cares about what goes on behind the walls 24/7 a day, and we do this without praise or recognition. Forgotten, we make our own brand of justice within these high walls surrounded by razor wires, and the rules change. We accept that as part of the work culture. These rule makers also use words like honor, code, and loyalty. The difference is rule makers are rule breakers and use these words to benefit their own individual power plays, their greed or lust for control, and demand loyalty to the person in charge, not to the agency or organization. Whereas in the Marines, it's God, duty, country, honor, code, loyalty to our country. Thus, these words have a new meaning for those who are corrupt and in a position to hand down code reds to these targeted individuals. They focus on control, power, unquestionable loyalty to the way they run things. Very, very important. You notice that it says the way they run things. Every prison has their own culture. Every prison has their own set of rules, both administratively, culturally, and environmentally. Just like in the movie where the commander says, I run my unit how I run my unit. You want to investigate me? Roll the dice and take your chances. Again, the rogue ideology, the arrogance, the just blatant disrespect for following the rules shows the arrogance that are imposed on these individuals that we call our leaders. I can deal with the bullets and the bombs and the blood. I don't want money and I don't want medals. They are justifying what they do because what I do here is stand there, okay, and defend you. They basically say, I break the rules to keep you safe. Maybe we as officers have a responsibility to this country to see that the men and women charged with security are trained professionally. Correctional administrators say the same. We do what we need to do to keep our officers trained and to keep things safe. Yes, I'm certain that I read that somewhere once, making a mockery of the policies and procedures that are in place and interpreting them in their own culture. The morality is that the colonel says that they live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. You can see that they justify what they do because they have a greater responsibility. They tell you that what they do, while tragic, probably saves lives. It's contrary to what they were all brought up to do in the sense of military code and military justice, but through their existence now projecting a grotesque and incomprehensible picture to you, they believe saves lives. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about it, you want me on that wall, you need me on the wall, and we can't handle the truth. That's why there's such a code of silence exists inside the prisons. The code of silence is what keeps everybody else from knowing what really goes on out there. The justification, I think you know the words already, what the colonel said. I would rather you say thank you and went on your way. Otherwise, I suggest you pick up a weapon, stand a post. Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you're entitled to. Telling them that don't criticize me for what I do unless you walk my shoes for a mile or two. The concept of a code red practice is alive and well in corrections, rarely spoken of because of the fear and direct consequences for doing so if caught. Today, many correctional officers endure daily browbeatings from their supervisors and co-workers. They tolerate it because the culture permits its existence, thus acceptable to many. Many correctional agencies have no external oversight. They are self-regulated. They conduct their own personal hiring practices, their personnel changes, investigations, disciplinary actions, and last but not least, their own personal criminal investigations. They have total control of the environment. Internally, they can control whatever happens within the walls, and nobody would know the truth because that's how they report it. So when the red phone goes off in the warden's office, it could be another code red ordered by those in power to checkmate an employee, regardless of their classification status and regardless whether they are speaking the truth or just making waves. It's all about control. Remember these words. Did you order the code red? Did you order the code red? Goddamn